to read between the lines. Got to read.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we are very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. My friends, today we have a little bit of a special guest, someone who is very dear to me, and we are going to be presenting him. He has been involved with, actually founded a foundation that I'm going to let him describe to you. And also, it's very pertinent to the events that we see going around today in our nation. So, Glenn, welcome aboard, my friend.
Good morning, Tom. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for being here. I know you are a private man, and I very much really appreciate you taking your time and speaking to the people throughout the nation, particularly here in the Northeast Kingdom and the state of Vermont. So Glenn, why don't we start by giving the people a background of the organization that you founded and what motivated you to do this?
Well, the motivation began with, like most good ideas, two guys having a cup of coffee in a private office above a funeral home, of all things. We were discussing the general decay that we had noticed in our city, our hometown, and we were wondering what things we could do to improve them. At the time, we were incorporated in October of 2001. As you know, that is the year, of course, 9/11 had occurred, and there was great emotion at the time for the military. It was something that you and I had not experienced during our military careers, but it was becoming a good thing to be involved and to appreciate the military. So that was being done by a lot of organizations. And the other gentleman involved with me, whom you know, Mr. John Ribello, we were talking about the beautiful statuary that we had in our city that had commemorated various war events and how they had fallen into a state of disrepair. As you know, if you pass any bronze statuary, you'll see that light green patina that forms on them. Initially, that is a good thing. Some patina is good, but it eventually will become corrosive and literally rot the bronze from the inside out. So we had all this beautiful statuary, and we were just two guys, as I said, over a cup of coffee, who decided this is where we were going to start. And we have no payroll. It's really just the two of us. We needed 7 other people to get articles of incorporation. And I opened the post office box, and he put $100 in a bank account, and the East Providence Battle Monuments Foundation was formed. One of our key things we wanted to do was to make sure that we really didn't want any politicians. Now, that's not to say there aren't good ones, but we just didn't want politics involved in what we were doing. So we started small with some small plaques and things that were in various locations. And the area you would remember as 6 Corners,
yes,
was actually named in 1931 American Legion Square. And as you know, I'm also a member of that organization, as are you. We went to work on that monument. It had pretty much sunken into the ground on a traffic island. And we went very quickly with, just by talking to some local business people and getting $100 here or $50 there, and we had enough to get that one done. And that was the impetus. But we do have 2 beautiful statues in the city of East Providence that are actually on the Smithsonian Register of national historic monuments. The World War I statue near our old junior high school, and the Civil War Memorial near the town hall. The Civil War Memorial was the first one we did. But as you might imagine, being a grassroots effort, we had no idea how to make this happen. So you start digging around, who can do this sort of thing. And we wanted local companies who'd be involved in their own community to see these things restored. And we found them. We found a foundry company who knew how to do it. And we just went about raising money through the small ways that people do it. Steak fries, spaghetti dinners, truly low budget, small things. We would appear at community fairs and put up an information booth and tell people why we were doing this.
And Glenn, generally speaking, were the people receptive to you?
Yes, Tom, they were. A number of people couldn't understand why we were doing it for the sake of doing it and not for a paycheck. There is no paycheck. We have no payroll. We are corporate, filing every year, and our post office box. Those are our expenses. Other than the money, every dollar goes into the restoration and the maintenance of the ones that we have restored. These big statues, these big bronze statues, need to be maintained once they've been restored. And it can be done with simple car wax. I didn't know that. Don't know if you did that either.
No, I didn't.
Once they're, and that's the thing, once they're done and restored, they can be maintained simply. So yes, the people were receptive initially, but curious. And of course, I took it upon myself and John and I to educate them, to say how important it was to maintain these things. Even though we weren't a part of the generation that erected it, we have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain it. You know, whether or not you like the history it represents, it is in fact history and cannot be changed. So, so part of my duties now, as I see fit, is to drive around periodically, given the current climate, to look at all the work that we've done to make sure it hasn't been desecrated. To this point, I'm happy to announce it has not been. Because, you know, obviously I think you know me enough to that where I wouldn't stop. I would seek that individual or individuals, and I think you know the outcome. But that's not the purpose of the organization. It's not retribution. The purpose is remembrance, which is crucial. And, you know, I think people have forgotten what it is to be civic minded, and that it's truly something to aspire to. There's nothing wrong with being civic minded and thinking that your community is a good place and you'd like it to look better for people entering that area. There's nothing wrong with that. And to try to teach people that is very difficult. It's something like you're doing every day on your show. It's a difficult breach to make. You give a lot of information, and the truth is, if you can get to one person, then you've succeeded. And that's kind of how we feel. And so we piece along. It's a very slow, it's a snail's pace. We try as little as hard to involve any form of government. In the past, if we've needed a police detail because we're going to block the road with a crane or what have you, I've found various civic-minded and patriotic policemen who will say they'll come in on their day off and they'll work that detail for us.
Fantastic.
So, and you know, yeah, it is good. There's a lot of good people out there, Tom. The news is all bad, but there's a lot of good people willing to do good things. You just got to tell them why you're doing it. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Right. Now, Glenn, with all the destruction we see of our national monuments today, why do you think that as Lenin called these people that are actually doing the destruction, Albert Pike called them the nihilist. Lenin called them the useful idiots. But they really, to me, Glenn, maybe I'm wrong, but they really do not understand why they are destroying the monuments. So if you would touch on that, and then I believe, Glenn, that the monuments are vitally important, as would be a textbook of history, because it's our nation's foundation. And that's what they're destroying, in my mind. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely. I'll give you some years ago, I happened to be over by the town hall looking at another monument that we want to get involved in. And there was a young boy, maybe 10 or 12 years old, sitting on it and just not really doing anything. He was not doing anything wrong, but he was sitting on top of the monument. His legs were dangling and kicking into the names of the fallen. So I called him aside and I said, hey, I said, do you mind if I ask your last name? And he told me. I said, well, let's look on this monument here to see if that name is there. And sure enough, it was. And I said, do you think that might be someone you're related to? And keep in mind, he's just a young boy. And he said, yeah, well, maybe I'll have to ask my mother and father. And, I think he did, but I explained the importance. I said, these were young men, not much older than you, that are no longer with us, who gave their life, as Abraham Lincoln said, their last true measure of devotion for their country. And, to try to communicate that to a young person or any person who's ignorant by default, they just don't understand. They haven't been taught. And as you said, this is the history of our country. And to tear it down doesn't make the history go away. That monument is still going to exist somewhere. And those men have still died. And we're not going to change that. But to try to communicate to a young person or to any person the importance of these monuments is one of the missions of our organization. So when we have an event, we have a book with photographs of the things that we've done, we're planning to do, and why we want to do them. And, we do get some pushback from some people who say we're just flag wavers or, bitter clingers and all of those things that you and I happily are. I'm proud to be a bitter clinger, and as I'm sure you are, and most of your audience. And I'm going to wave the flag until they lay it over my coffin. But the monuments themselves, they're first of all extremely beautiful, and they took an incredible amount of effort and work to do. So sometimes you have to appeal to people in that way and say, look, this was a lot of work. And a small group of people 100 years ago, gathered up the money to build this. This one just didn't show up one day. And so you like it to tearing down private property. I think we have to talk to people about this is not just something we put in the middle of a park. Somebody paid for this. It's private property. Why are you destroying it? And if you can ask these people why they're doing it, they really don't know. As you say, they are in fact useful idiots. And that's the part that bothers me. If you're recently in Boston, I'm sure you saw it, the Emancipation Memorial.
Yes.
Lincoln over a rising slave.
Yes.
And because that slave was in a crouched position, but they all took it as the slave was kneeling to the high white master, which of course is not the case if you read the history of that memorial. Mm-hmm. If you look carefully, the slave is rising from slavery. And this is where, as you say, the useful idiots, the ignorant, are not paying attention. They're not reading the words on the memorial. They're simply because there's a crowd saying, hey, let's tear it down. And that's the sad thing. So whenever we as the Battle Monuments Foundation can talk to people and say, this is why this is here, it's important. I mean, the Civil War monument that's outside our town hall has 900 names on it. Now, you know the size of our hometown, our old hometown. That's a lot of guys from one town. If you think about it, 900 men in a town of that size.
Right.
So that would, and to call someone's attention to reading the names. That's why it's important, I think, that a memorial should have names on it of individuals, because that's what gets to people. They have to know that it's not just an obelisk in the middle of nowhere. This is because this person is no longer with us, and we need to remember them.
And Glenn, I think, my brother, that some of the void of the historical significance has to be blamed on the schools, the public schools. Yes, and this wasn't by happen chance or just mistake. This was purposely put in. We had many people that spoke of this, John Dewey and many others. I won't get into all the names, that spoke about how they were going to create a counter culture. And basically, Glenn, when the feds took over the school system in '64, we have incrementally experienced this, that where today our youth do not have an educational foundation, not only in our culture, but in the documents, in the history, in the reasoning of why these people made these sacrifices, why they voluntarily put their life and limb on the line. These documents were not only paid for in cash, they were paid for in blood. And speak to me, if you would. I know, not to get too personal, but I know that you spend an exorbitant amount of money to keep your beautiful daughter out of the public school system and into a much better qualified education, yet still having to, by law, substantiate what I call the public fool system, the indoctrination system. So do you agree with me that some of this blame for the ignorance of our youth has to be placed into the school system?
Oh, there's no question about that. There's absolutely no question about it. If you think about the things that are not being taught that were being taught when we were in school, now, granted, that was 50 years ago, but a simple thing like civics is not taught anymore. Understanding how government is supposed to work. We're not going to get into the fact that it does or does not, but we're understanding that the understanding of the Constitution is not taught. I am pleased to say that it is in fact taught at my daughter's school, as you say. But you're right, it is a tremendous expense, which I'm lucky, fortunate enough, my wife and I, we work hard and we can do it. But there's so much missing today, as you say, in the public school system. They're getting revisionist history, and it really isn't even that. It's story time, and it's not even true history. They're not learning it. They don't know the founding. They don't know the stories that you and I, even the stories that we learned as young children in school, were far more accurate than what's being portrayed today. History is trying to be erased, but it can't be. It happened, And this is what I always point to when my daughter will occasionally approach me with a history assignment and whatnot, and I'm pleased to see that the facts that she's getting are accurate. So we often have historical discussions, and I'll put things in historical context, something that we're doing now into a historical context, which for a teenage girl, as you might imagine, is annoying. But it's important that we have the history of our country open for the public to see. And that, again, brings us back to the monuments.
Agreed.
That is public history, whether it be from the Confederacy or the Union. The Civil War happened. We can't change that. It was a dark period in our time, but it occurred. It doesn't make those men less American. And they followed their heart, which we did. You know, we joined the military right out of high school and moved on because we thought it was the right thing to do. At a time, as you recall, it was not considered to be a wise decision. The military was looked down upon, and we came through those years.
We were actually told, Glenn, when I was in the Marine Corps, not to wear our uniforms in our own country.
Yeah, I experienced that too, coming home from Korea. Took us all into a hangar to change my uniform into civilian clothing. And I refused. I wouldn't do it. So I walked through the airport and got spit at and broke somebody's jaw and spent the night in jail. But that to me is worth what we do. I mean, that's worth it. That's worth the time. I'm never going to be ashamed of the fact that I'm a veteran. I'm never going to be ashamed of the flag that hangs on my lawn and right behind me, as I'm sure you are. You know, I'm a patriot. I'm going to die that way. So that's who we are, Tom. And, you know, people like us and most of your audience, I'm sure, we're not going to change, but we do have a responsibility to try to educate. And as you say, if we can get to one person to say, just pay attention, open your eyes, and, you know, don't look at the first search that comes up. People tend to, you know, we learned this in high school writing. You know, you don't start with the first source. Do some digging. And a lot of people don't want to dig, you know, and look for what the real truth is. Because it's there. I mean, you are telling the truth with your show, with your very being since I've known you. Truth is the essence of what you stand for. And I like to think it's what I stand for also. Because without it, I mean, you know, we are who we are. This is still the greatest country on earth. I've been to many of them, as have you. I've seen a lot of darkness. I've seen true tyranny. I've seen true oppressed people. And if we're not careful, we will slide down the same road as so many other countries. Argentina comes to mind and others. But I know I'm getting off on a tangent. I didn't want to do that, but it's always comfortable talking to you, and I'm forgetting that we're on your time and not mine.
Well, no, Glenn, I totally agree with everything that you're saying, and I would like to continue down that road if you don't mind, because the lessons of history have come to our front door, haven't they?
No question.
And what I see happening, Glenn, you know, there's some quotes that I have here from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and basically he really says that, you know, don't participate in the lie. Understanding, educate yourself. You know, understand the lie. Don't participate in the lie. We talked about the Civil War earlier. The guys that left their families and farms, they didn't risk life and limb so that 4.5% of their population would maintain the right of slavery. As a matter of fact, slavery was becoming economically not feasible with the advent of machinery and other things that were going on. So what they were fighting for was the federal, literally the federalism of state sovereign rights. That's what they were fighting for. And when the Union soldiers, they were fighting to keep the Union. I have a book, Glenn, and I know we've discussed it before, but it's a very thick volume of book, but it's all about, it's letters written from soldiers and people in both sides of the conflict, talking about the Civil War. And very, very few of them even mention the topic of slavery. One thing, exactly, but what the schools have taught was the whole thing was about slavery, when it really was about the expansion of federalism upon the sovereignty of the independent states that make up the Union.
And if you tell someone that the largest owners of the largest quantity of slaves were in fact black, they don't believe you. But I
totally agree with you.
Absolutely, it's absolutely true. And you know what? I don't feel I'm qualified to get into the slavery discussion, but here again, the history of it, people need to understand. The Somali pirates go way back before 1990. I mean, Jefferson sent the Marine Corps there. I mean, it's in the Marine Corps hymn, as you know.
Right.
This has been going on. They have enslaved their own people almost since the beginning of time, and slavery has occurred throughout the world long before America existed. And it was so commonplace throughout Europe, throughout Africa, throughout the rest of the world, that it wasn't really thought of as the heinous thing we believe it to be today. I try to tell people when we're talking about history to take it in the context of the period. You need to understand that. I will say that I bear no guilt for slavery. I don't think anyone living today should feel any guilt about slavery today. It occurred. It still occurs in much of the rest of the world. And if they were truly interested in stopping it, well, that's where I'd stop it. It's no longer here. But, you're absolutely right. The South really wasn't fighting about slavery. They were fighting about, the 10th Amendment, essentially.
Literally.
Those items not in the Constitution are deferred to the states. There you go. You run it the way you need to run it. But, that's here again, the history of all of the things that we're talking about is embodied in the statuary that litters this country, literally. There's great history there to be seen. And, in most of these cities and towns, there's a walking tour or things like that you can go, and there is someone to provide historical knowledge about these statuaries. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Maybe someday we will. My organization is still very small, although we've been incorporated since 2001. But we don't spend money on advertising. We don't. We go and we talk and we sit at a fair and what have you, and try to educate people and get $1 or $2 to what we need to do. But I'm sorry, I digressed. But did you have another question? Because I know we're coming up on the break here. And
well, that's fine. No, Glenn, I was going to say a quote to you to complement what you just said. It was by Napoleon Bonaparte, and what he said was that history is agreed upon lies by the victors. And this is basically your life, our childhood, Glenn, to blanket it, was part of what was known as a counterculture. You had to counter the foundation of the country, and they were successful. They were very successful with that. Them taking away the statues and just tearing them down, even against like Frederick Douglass, tearing down Frederick Douglass's statue. They have no understanding what they're doing, nor why. But now we are entering.
That's the cancel culture.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Now we are entering the cancel culture. And that's exactly where we are. And so you're seeing this also.
Well, of course we're seeing it, Tom. But we see it in everything, not just the statuary. The general frame of mind of leftists, there's no other way to say it, and others is to, if we don't like it, let's cancel it. And I don't understand the logic of not being able to have a discussion. There have been things over the years that you and I have disagreed upon, yet we're still close friends, brothers.
Yes.
And so why can't we agree to disagree? That those days are gone. It's, it seems that people are saying it's my way or the highway. And that's tragic. That's not America. No way. We can disagree on these things. Why can't, but if you've had a discussion with someone from that side, there is no discussion. They only want to shout you down and tell you what you're saying is wrong. And I try to maintain a civil and calmed demeanor when I'm meeting these people, as difficult as that is for me, because I say, I really want to hear what you have to say. Why do you feel this way? And most of them don't know. They come out with blurbs of information, little pieces they may have heard from someone else. They don't really know why they're saying it. They just want to be on that side of, I don't like what you're saying. And, sorry, we still have the First Amendment. It's hanging on by a thread, but we still got it. And, I'm heartbroken by this, as I'm sure you are, because I feel terrible for their ignorance, that somehow we dropped that ball in the past 30 or so years, where we just could have talked to them a little bit wiser, given them more information without insulting them. I don't know what the answer is, Tom. I really don't. So for myself, and I think for probably you, I keep it close. I try to just educate my own family, and then take a baby step and say, this is what needs to be done. And I fear for the next generation what we may be handing them in 90 days. As you know, there isn't a more crucial election I can think of. I didn't want to go down the political road with you, but we always seem to go that way.
Well, the politics affects our daily lives. It affects the future of this nation, and I agree with you. Glenn, you and I are both students of history, and I cannot think of a more crucial election, a hinge point election, if you would, is the one that's coming here. I think it's 92 and a wake up, 93 and a wake up, somewhere in that window. And I agree with what you're saying completely. But speaking about, to complement what you're saying here, if Trump wins, there's going to be chaos. If Trump loses, there's going to be chaos. And I don't see our nation taking any other road at this point. I guess my question to you would be this, Glenn. Do you think we can turn this around without it going kinetic, without it going violent? It's already gotten violent to some degree, but people on our political spectrum have not responded with violence yet. So far, we have been on the receiving end of all the violence. And if that silent majority gets to the point of saying they've had enough and a true civil war takes place in our nation, I fear, my brother, that this is what the powers to be actually want, to create that chaos. And this is why I say that education is our best ammo. But I don't know, whatever is going to be the outcome of this coming election, if we are not going to travel down the road of it going kinetic, of it going violent. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's terrifying, but accurate what you're saying. As you know, many of us and many of your audience have been preparing for anything for a number of years. I think violence is probably inevitable. Obviously, it's already occurring. But I think most of the people that I know and probably your audience will be prepared to, at first, defend themselves. And I'm sure that most of your audience is more than prepared to do so. I'm prepared to do that. I am prepared to hunker down, stand fast, and that flag's not coming down from my front yard. I think I'm probably echoing what much of your audience thinks. My fear is that for some, that will not be enough. I'm hoping that the people who are on our side of thinking will not go on the offense, regardless of the election outcome. Certainly defend your own rights, defend your own property, protect your family at all costs. I personally am not willing to go out into the street and look for a fight. But if it comes to my door, then it changes. I think that I'm probably sound like a lot of people that would be in your audience. We don't want to fight. We'd like America to be the great country that it is. I believe we can still hang on to this republic and keep it as great. It's still the greatest place on earth. There is no greater country than America. But I agree with you. There is going to be chaos, however November 3rd turns. It's a scary time. I won't lie to you. I am truly frightened for the future. But it doesn't, fear is not, it's just something we create. So, I'm prepared. We'll do what we need to do. As I say, I don't think most of your audience is going to go out into the street looking for a fight, looking to encounter Antifa or whomever. But if they come, well, then they've made a mistake. And I was pointing out to my daughter just recently that the Antifa logo really hasn't changed since the Bolshevik Revolution.
You're right on the money, my friend.
And I said, so they've been around a long time, causing problems. And
if I may, Glenn, financed by the same people. It's the same bloodlines, the same bankers that have financed these organizations.
And so, the question is, how does the little guy defeat big money? There is no answer to that. I mean, we really can't defeat them. But information, just talking to people about simple things. And this takes me back to my organization and why we did it, if I may.
Please do.
We can't fix the world, Tom. So you start by picking up a piece of trash. You start small. You do one thing that makes it better for somebody else. And if you can just do that, then that's where we are. That's how America stays America. We're always going to have problems. We're always going to have those who aren't happy. We can't make everybody happy. But I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you talk to someone and you ask them how they are, they say living the dream. Have you experienced that?
I have, yes.
And I often take that opportunity to say, yes, you are. You are an American living free. Liberty was the dream. It wasn't a house and a car and a boat and all those things. If it was that for you, then that's what it was. But liberty was the dream. And as Reagan said, if we lose liberty here, that's it. There is no other place to go. And, I kind of get some strange looks when I say that to people because they've been saying it now for so long. I'm living the dream. Well, yeah, you are. You're living in a free country for the time being. And liberty's the dream. And those who have forgotten that are the problem.
I agree, Glenn. Glenn, we're just about out of time, my friend. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Would you tell the people how, if they wish to contact you or make a donation to your organization? We are public access, so we can't really ask for donations, but if they wanted to get some more information about your organization, how would they do that?
Well, sadly, Tom, we don't even have a site. We're working on that, but we only have a P.O. box.
Okay.
So if a tax-free contribution was to be made, it's the East Providence Battle Monuments Foundation, P.O. Box 14157, East Providence, Rhode Island 02914. We've always tried to keep any expenses down. Every dollar we make goes toward what we want to do to restore and create new monuments. And so, we've approached some web builders and whatnot, but the fee is not there for us. So we don't want to do it. We don't want to pay right now. So we're clearly in the Stone Age on that matter, but we've got a lot of work done, considering we're a couple of dinosaurs.
Right. Well, Glenn, maybe there's somebody out there that would be interested in helping you out with that endeavor. And Glenn, personally speaking, I am very proud to have you as a friend, as a fellow American, and I am very, very proud of what you and John have done to keep our history alive, in the forefront of it. Thousands of people daily go by these monuments, and they're historically very significant to our culture and to the future of our country. So, Glenn, on that being said, I want to thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can do this again in the future, my friend. But unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we have to say adieu, and we will talk soon.
Tom, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you to you and your staff for linking this up, and God bless America to you all, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Very good, my friend. Be well.
You as well.
Folks, as always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, obtain knowledge, and manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. And we thank you for watching.
Read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is